Chapter 7. The Marvellous Ears. Back in the cave, the big friendly giant sat Sophie down once again on the enormous table. "Is you quite snugly there in your nightie?" he asked. "Are you a bit cold?" "Oh, I'm fine," Sophie said. "I cannot help thinking," said the BFG, "about your poor mummy and daddy. By now they must be jipping and scumping all over the house, shouting, 'Hello, hello, where is Sophie gone?'" "I don't have a mummy or daddy," Sophie said. "They both died when I was a baby." "Oh, you poor little scumplet," cried the BFG. "Is you not missing them very badly?" "Well, not really," Sophie said, "because I never knew them." "You is making me very sad." And he started to rub his eyes, and a tear dropped down onto his cheek. "Don't be sad," Sophie said. "No one is going to be worrying too much about me. That place you took me from was the village orphanage. We are all orphans there." "You is an orphan?" "Yes." "How many is in there? How many is in there?" 10 of us, Sophie said. "All little girls." "Was you happy there?" the BFG asked. "I hated it," Sophie said. "The woman who ran it was Mrs. Clonkers, and if she caught you breaking any of the rules, like getting out of bed at night or not folding up your clothes, you got punished." "Well, how is you getting punished?" "She locked us in the dark cellar for a day and a night without anything to eat or drink." "The rotten old road trusper," cried the BFG. "It was horrid," Sophie said. "We used to dread it. There were rats down there. We could hear them creeping about." "The filthy old fizzle-wiggle," shouted the BFG. "That is the horridest thing I is hearing for years. You is making me sadder than ever." And all at once a huge tear that would have filled a bucket rolled down one of the BFG's cheeks and fell with a splash on the floor, and it made quite a puddle. Sophie watched with astonishment. "What a strange and moody creature this is," she thought. "One moment he's telling me my head is full of squashed flies, and the next moment his heart is melting for me because Mrs. Clonker locks us in the cellar." "The thing that worries me," Sophie said, "is having to stay in this dreadful place for the rest of my life. The orphanage was pretty awful, but I wouldn't have been there forever, would I?" "All is my fault," the BFG said. "I is the one who kid-snatched you." Yet another enormous tear welled from his eye and splashed onto the floor. "Now I come to think of it, I won't actually be here all that long," Sophie said. "I is afraid you will," the BFG said. "No, I won't. Those brutes out there are bound to catch me sooner or later and have me for tea. I is never going to let that happen." And for a few moments the cave was silent. Then Sophie said, "May I ask you a question, please?" And the BFG wiped the tears from his eyes with the back of his hand and gave Sophie a long, thoughtful stare. "Shoot away," he said. "Would you please tell me what you were doing in our village last night? Why were you poking that long trumpet thing into the Gucci children's bedroom and then blowing through it?" "Oh," cried the BFG, sitting up suddenly in his chair. "Now we is getting nosier than a Parker, are we?" "And that suitcase you were carrying," Sophie said. "What on earth was all that about?" The BFG stared suspiciously at the small girl sitting cross-legged on the table. "You is asking me to tell you whatsy big secrets," he said. "Secrets that nobody is ever hearing before." I won't tell a soul," Sophie said. "I swear it. How could I anywhere? I'm stuck here for the rest of my life." "You could be telling the other giants." "No, I couldn't," Sophie said. "You told me they would eat me up the moment they saw me." So they would. You is a human being, and human beings is like straw bunkles and creams to those giants." If they're going to eat me the moment they see me, then I wouldn't have time to tell them anything, would I? Sophie said. I suppose you wouldn't. Then why did you say I might? Because I is brimful of buzzburgers, the BFG said. If you listen to everything I'm saying, you will be getting earache. Please tell me what you were doing in our village. I promise you can trust me. Well, would you teach me how to make an elephant? The BFG asked. What do you mean? Sophie said. I would dearly love to have an elephant to ride on, the BFG said dreamily. I would so much love to have a jumbly big elephant to go riding through green forests, picking peachy fruits off the tree all day long. This is a sizzling hot muck-frumping country we live in. Nothing grows in it except snoz cucumbers. I love to go somewhere else and pick peachy fruits in the early morning from the back of an elephant. Sophie was quite moved by this curious statement. Perhaps one day we will get you an elephant, she said, and peachy fruits as well. Now tell me what you were doing in our village. If you're really wanting to know what I'm doing in your village, I is blowing a dream into the bedroom of those children. What do you mean, blowing a dream? I is dream-blowing giant, the BFG said, when all the other giants is galloping off every day, what way and that way, to swallow up the human beings. I is scuttling away to other places to blow dreams into bedrooms of sleeping children. Nice dreams, lovely golden dreams, dreams that is giving the dreamers a happy time. Now hang on a minute, Sophie said. Where do you get these dreams from? I collect them. And he waved his arm around and the rows and rows of bottles on the shelves. I has billions of dreams. You can't collect a dream, Sophie said. A dream isn't something you can catch hold of. Oh, you is never going to understand about it, the BFG said. That is why he is not wishing to tell you. Oh, please, please, please tell me. I will understand. Go on, tell me how you collect dreams. Tell me everything. Please, tell me, tell me, tell me. The BFG settled himself comfortably in his chair and crossed his legs. Dreams, he said, is very mysterious things. They is floating around in the air like wispy, misty bubbles, and all the time they is searching for sleeping people. Can you see them? Sophie asked. No, not at first. Then how do you catch them if you can't see them? Ah, now he is getting on to dark and dusky secrets. I won't tell a soul, I promise. Why is trusting you? The BFG closed his eyes and sat quite still for a moment while Sophie waited. A dream, he said, as it goes whiffling through the night air, is making a tiny little buzzing humming noise. But this little buzzy hum is so silvery soft, it is impossible for a human being to be hearing it. Can you hear it? Sophie asked. The BFG pointed up to his enormous truck wheel ears. There we are, look. His huge, huge ears. And he began to move his ears in and out again, you know, like we did the other day. In, out, but I haven't got very big ears. Is you seeing these, he asked. How could I miss them, Sophie said. They maybe is looking a bit prosperous to you, the BFG said, but you must believe me when I say they is a very extra usually is indeed. They is not to be coughed at. Well, I'm quite sure they're not, Sophie said. There's allowing me to hear absolutely every single twiddly little thing. You mean you can hear things I can't hear, Sophie said? You is deaf as a dumpling compared to me. You is hearing only thumping loud noises with these little earwigs of yours, but I am hearing all the secret whisperings of the world. What do you mean? Such as what? Sophie asked. In your country, he said, I is hearing the footsteps of a ladybird as she goes walking across a leaf. No, honestly? What's more, I is hearing the footsteps very loud. When a ladybird is walking across a leaf, I is hearing her feet go clumpety, clumpety, clump, like giant footsteps. Goodness gracious me, Sophie said. What else can you hear? I is hearing the little ants and chittering to each other as they scuttle around in the soil. You mean you can hear ants talking? Every single word. Although I is not exactly understanding their language. Go on, Sophie said. Sometimes on a very clear night, the BFG said, and if I is swiggling my ears in the right direction, and here he swiveled his great ears upwards so they were facing the ceiling. If I is squiggled them like this and the night is very clear, like this, I is sometimes hearing far away music coming from the stars in the sky. A little shiver passed through Sophie's body. She sat very quiet, waiting for more. My ears is what told me you were watching me out of your window last night. But I didn't make a sound, Sophie said. I was hearing your heart beating across the road. Loud as a drum it was. Oh, go on, please, Sophie said. I can hear plants and trees. Do they talk? Well, they's not exactly talking, but they is making noises. For instance, if I come along and I is picking a lovely flower, if I is twisting the stem of the flower till it breaks, then the plant is screaming. Someone was twisting just like if someone was twisting your arm right off. Is that really true? Sophie asked. You think I was figgling you? Well, it is very hard to believe. Then I is stopping right here. I is not wishing to be called a fibster. Oh no, I'm not calling you anything, Sophie cried. I do believe you. I really, please go on. The BFG gave her a long, hard stare. Sophie looked right back at him, her face open to his. I believe you, she said softly. She had offended him and she could see that. I wouldn't ever be fibbing to you. I know you wouldn't, Sophie said, but you must understand that it isn't easy to believe such amazing things straight away. I understand that. So please do forgive me and go on. He waited a while longer and then he said, it is the same with trees as it is with flowers. If I is chopping an axe into the trunk of a big tree, I is hearing a terrible sound coming from the inside the heart of the tree. What sort of sound? A soft moaning sound. It's like a sound of an old man. The sound of a man, an old man, when he is dying slowly. The cave was very silent. Trees is living and growing just like you and me. They is alive and so is plants. He was sitting very straight in his chair now, his hands clasped tightly together in front of him. His face was bright, his eyes round and bright as 2 stars. Such wonderful and terrible sounds I is hearing, he said. Some of them you would never wish to be hearing yourself, but some is like glorious magic. He seemed almost to be transfigured by the excitement of his thoughts. His face was beautiful in its blaze of emotions. Tell me some more about them, Sophie said quietly. You just ought to be hearing. What? What else can you hear? Well, I can hear the little miceys talking. Little miceys is always talking to each other, and I is hearing them as loud as my own voice. What do they say? Sophie asked. Only the miceys know that. Spiders is also talking a great deal. You might not be thinking it, but when spiders are moving around, they are the most tremendous natterboxes. And then when they're spinning their webs, they is singing all the time. They're singing sweeter than a nightingale. Who else do you hear? Sophie asked. Well, one of the biggest chatterbags is a cattle peddlers. What do they say? Well, they's arguing all the time about who is going to be the prettiest butterfly. That is all they ever talk about. Is there a dream floating around in here right now? Sophie asked. The BFG moved his great ears this way and that, listening intently. He shook his head. There is no dream in here, he said, except in the bottles. I has a special place to go for catching dreams. There's not often coming to Giant Company. Well, how do you catch them? Well, the same way as you catch your butterflies, with a net. He stood up and crossed over to the corner of the cave where a pole was leaning against the wall. The pole, about 30 feet long, and there was a net on the end of it. Here is the dream catcher. Every morning I'm going out and snitching new dreams to put in me bottles. But then suddenly, he seemed to lose interest in the conversation. I was getting hungry, he said. It's time for eats. And that's the end of that chapter. And see you again soon.